Okay. Hi, y'all. My name is Jennifer Huddleston Kelly, and I am an alcoholic. I've been kept sober since December 5th of 92, and that's my miracle. And the Frisco group in Frisco, Texas is my home group, and it's an honor and a privilege to get to be here tonight and to share my experience, strength, and hope. I was thinking just a minute ago about, because everybody was talking about the weather, and my first summer sober. And I got sober in December. I always say that if you got sober in December, God picked your sobriety date because nobody would willingly get sober when there were people buying drinks at the bar for you. Um, but so I was, I was 6, 7 months sober that first summer, and it was just this revelation. I had by then I was well into the steps. I had definitely done a fourth and a fifth step. And one of the secrets that came out on that inventory was that I couldn't swim. And so, of course, there's a party at the lake or something. I think it was at the lake. And everybody's going, and I don't want to go to the lake. I don't want these people to see me in in my bathing suit. I don't want to have to tell people I can't swim. I don't it's all very intimidating, and yet I do it differently. I just, because I am sober, I just say yes. And I put on I was not this size, by the way. I was not normal sized, but I was not this fun sized. Anyway, but I put on my bathing suit and I told the people at the lake that I'm not a strong swimmer, which really meant I'm a drowner, keep an eye out. I was learning to not drown that summer. And they brought me floaties as a joke, which was it really was funny. And and nothing about that whole thing seemed like it would be fun. And yet I remember the sun went down and we're eating burnt hot dogs and, flaming marshmallows, and sitting around singing songs around the fire. And I haven't had a drink. And there are people there who genuinely know and care about me. And I don't really care that I'm wearing a bathing suit in front of these people. And I don't really care that I'm not at the bar, meeting some cute boy. I feel like I'm home. And that's kind of where, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that in 6 short months I had fallen in love not only with sobriety but with you people. I fell in love with you people first. Sobriety came a little bit later. Sobriety just seemed like a necessary evil so that I could stay with you. And so I'm really thankful that I didn't know what I was talking about, because every time I would think about getting sober, what I would think is, I am never, ever going to have fun again. I am never going to have fun again. And I love how our brains just get warped by alcoholism, because I hadn't been having fun for a long time. I had been going to the bar with the hopes of fun, but I hadn't had fun for a really long time. Recently, we were talking about the first step, and one of the things that occurred to me was that crime was involved at every single time I drank. Every single time I drank, I broke the law in one form or another, whether it was stealing or buying some illicit substance or driving while intoxicated or some. There was a crime involved. And I'm a nice little church girl, by the way. When I started drinking, I was somewhere between 16 and 17 years old. I was very active in my school and in my church. I wanted to be a minister when I grew up. I mean, I was that kid. And so I started out absolutely on the straight and narrow. And then I took a drink. And when I took a drink, I had a new higher power almost instantly. And I wasn't concerned that this would be a problem, because no one in my family drank or seemed to have a problem. I it just drinking wasn't good or bad in my family. It just wasn't a part of my family. And I took that drink and I was instantly obsessed. I loved the way that it made me feel. I loved, my first drink was with one of my friends from high school, and she was a teeny tiny drill teamy girl. And I never was, like, I was never teeny tiny, and I certainly wasn't a blonde, busty drill teamy girl. I was the president of your student senate. I was that kid. And and she was Susie. She could giggle and flirt, and people wanted to do things for her. And that's just never been my story. And I was so jealous of this girl. And as we drank, my perception of me changed. And as we drank, it went from Susie's up here and I'm down here, to Susie and I are neck and neck when we get one bottle of wine in, to I drink the second bottle of wine and I can take her at anything. Let's do the splits, man. I'm in. I think that I can do anything, because that's what alcohol does for me, at least temporarily. It makes me feel like suddenly I belong, when before I took that drink, I was so certain I didn't. And if you really knew me, and if you really spoke the truth, and I've had this voice in my head for over 50 years that just says, they only let you come because they feel sorry for you. I mean, she is mean. At this point, she's got a name. Her name is Dolores, and I call her the mean girl in my head, and I recognize who she is when she starts talking. But I didn't know that for a long, long time, that I had this mean girl installed in my head. And when I took a drink, Dolores shut up for a little while, and it was glorious, because without Dolores constantly critiquing me, I could go dance and I could flirt and I could do things that I just couldn't seem to do when I was sober and Dolores was constantly talking to me. And so of course I drank. Man, I loved that. And I loved how it felt when I drank, and I became obsessed from that first night. I could not wait to do it again. And but for a gal like me, obsession is not a red flag. Obsession for me is a normal day at the office. And to this day, like, I am an enthusiast. And so I get on these tangents, um and that's just how I do things. Like, I don't even know if I like you unless I'm just a little bit psychotic about it. That's just who I am. And so, like, during the pandemic, it was a glorious time for me because I got to start 212 different hobbies. I There was this period of time where I was playing the ukulele like all day long. And if I wasn't playing the ukulele, I was shopping for ukuleles, and I was downloading music for the ukulele, and I was watching other people play the ukulele. And I mean, it was just this constant. At 3 o'clock in the morning, my husband's getting up and I'm in there plink, plink, plinking on the ukulele. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I found American Pie." I mean, that's just how my brain works. So it's not like when all of a sudden all I want to do is drink or think about drinking, that I go, "Oh, this is abnormal. I should probably be concerned," because that's the only way I do anything. But here's the difference. There came a day when I didn't feel like playing the freaking ukulele, and guess what? I didn't play the ukulele. Like, I didn't have to write an inventory or call a sponsor or do a bunch of service work. I just didn't play the ukulele. Um, like, I can stop the ukulele cold turkey if I want to. But I could not do that with alcohol. And I couldn't figure out why. I was a bar drinker from pretty early on. I was sneaking into bars still in high school, and they were lame bars. Like, it was I'm pretty sure they were clear that we were not of legal drinking age, but it was the 80s and they weren't cracking down as much as they do now. But anyway, we found this little bar that was in an apartment complex. It was like the clubhouse, but they served alcohol there. And my friend and I went in there. She found it first, and we went in there and we ordered a slow gin fizz. Now, this was like 1982, 83. A slow gin fizz. Like, dead giveaway that we don't know what we are doing because nobody has ordered a slow gin fizz since about 1964. The slow gin bottle has, this layer of dust all over it because nobody drinks slow gin except these two little girls who come into this bar because it tastes like Kool-Aid. Yeah, and so we went into this bar and we drank slow gin fizzes and flirted with grown men. And we just thought it was fun. It's so funny to me now because I think about what I was doing at 16 and 17 and 18 years old, break out in a sweat. It is terrifying, the stupid things that we did, and with no thought of what the consequences could be. But anyway, so I loved drinking. It did for me what I wanted it to do. And I didn't even know what the problem was, but I felt like I had found the solution. And for a little while, drinking was just nothing but fun. I love the part in Bill's story where he says, I had arrived. And I had arrived looks like different things for different people. And for me, I had arrived was when I was about, I don't know, 19 or so. And I had grown friends. I had fallen in with an older crowd, which is always a theme among alcoholics. We always think it's because we're so mature. And it's ridiculous. I'm not mature now, and I'm 57 or something. Um, but I had friends who were in their 30s or 40s, and I was drinking in a bar. If I This was during the time when sometimes I was legal and sometimes I wasn't because the law was changing right during that time. And but I was drinking in a real bar, and the guys that I was flirting with and who were flirting with me all had jobs and cars, and they weren't living with their mothers. I mean, so I'm just feeling like, wow, this is the big time. I'm really cool now. I very distinctly remember the first night that I learned how to take shots of tequila, a lesson I probably should have skipped because it made for some weird mornings. But I just, I was having fun. I was having fun. By night, I became this honky tonk angel because I flunked out of college in record time, which I found really surprising. I had taken a test that said I would be really good at college, and the test lied because I discovered drinking and college boys, and I kind of forgot to go to class like altogether. I was living one day at a time while I was in college. The problem was that the day was tomorrow. Tomorrow was the day I was going to get it all together. And tomorrow was the day that I was going to show up for class. And tomorrow was the day I was going to write that paper. And tomorrow never got here. And so I flunked out of school and I moved to a town near the university town that I just left because I had my 9 hours of college credit. I was pretty much ready for life. And I became a preschool teacher, which is great, except for all them kids. I'm just saying, if you're going to be hungover every day of your life, I do not recommend having 18 4-year-olds like right here, first thing in the morning. And yet that's what I'm experiencing is I'm detoxing with little children just squealing in my ear every single morning. And it's funny now, but it was not funny then. And so by night I'm this honky tonk angel running from bar to bar, sort of drinking on the circuit because I love bar drinking and I love the possibilities as I went to those bars. I just knew he was going to be there and he was going to fall in love and we were going to ride off into the sunset. Only I have alcoholism and I don't know I've got it. And so nothing is satisfactory. I can't keep the good things that come into my life, and I'm attracted to the things that are not healthy at all. And I'm trying to duct tape things together while I'm sober, but I can't stay sober. During the day, I'm trying to fix all the stuff I'm messing up at night. And as Bill says, gradually things get worse. It starts out a lot of fun and there are a few consequences. But within a few years of taking my first legal drink, I've gotten my first DWI. And I mean, it was humiliating. I went to jail when I was in high school for stealing a street sign. And it was not my first trip to jail. It wasn't my last, but it scared me a little bit. but just a little bit, because I've got an alcoholic mind. And what my mind says is, this happens to every party girl. You know, it's just one of the consequences of just being a lot of fun, is everybody gets one DWI. And so, which is apparently not true. There are just scads of people who have never been to jail at all. Who knew? But that's what my brain had to do to justify the way that I was living. And so, and then less than 6 months later, it was shocking, because I had hired this attorney and he worked out of his garage. Because I don't know if you know this, but preschool teachers are not making bank. So I needed the cheapest attorney known to man, and I found him, and he worked out of his garage. And which probably meant he was the finest attorney in the county. And I went to go see him, and he said, "Jennifer, when they pull you over again, here's what I want you to do." And I thought it was so weird that he was warning me about what to do when I got pulled over again, because I had this really solid plan. I was going to be more careful. And I mean, what could go wrong with a plan like that? Well, let me tell you. I found out less than 6 months later, when I'm in jail for the second time on DWI, which is actually my third trip to jail, which is still not my last. I realized then that I drink the no care juice and then tell myself I'm going to be more careful. So we're going to need a better plan than be more careful. That's when I discovered that I had a problem, was when I got that second DWI, because I haven't even been convicted on the first one, and now I've got a second one, and that makes a judge really mad. So I know that I need a solution at this point, and the solution I come up with is that I move next door to my favorite bar. Problem solved. I'm a big picture kind of gal. I got a driving problem, and I come up with a driving solution, and I think the problem is solved. Because I don't know that I have alcoholism. I don't know that it's progressive. I don't know that it's fatal. And I certainly don't know that I have it. I would be offended if you called me an alcoholic. And yet, I can tell you at that point that I drank too much too often. I mean, I know that much. I had a friend years ago. His name was Blind Joe, and he went to some friends, and he had a friend that was sober. He said, "I think I might be an alcoholic." This guy knew him really, really well. And he said, "Oh, I don't think you're alcoholic. You just take too big of swallows too close together." And so for the next 2 years, he tried to take smaller swallows further apart. And after 2 years, he went to the guy and said, "No, I don't think that's it. I'm an alcoholic." But by the time he went back to his friend, he was convinced. And that's what happened to me. Was I suspected that we were on a wrong path. But by the time I got that third DWI, I knew that something was really wrong, like seriously wrong, and I knew I couldn't fix it by myself. By the time I got the third DWI, things were pretty messy in my life. There were people that I was running around with and people that I was drinking with, and some of them weren't making it out alive. They were dying of various things. Some died in car wrecks, some died of suicides, some died accidentally. There were people who were getting locked up. I could see the path that I was on, and was having a very difficult time telling myself a story about how it was going to be different for me, because I drove every night that I drank, and I drank every night. No one ever took my car keys away from me. And I knew that I was playing Russian roulette with that car, and yet I was powerless not to do it. I kept convincing myself that I've got this under control, and there was no control to be had. There were jobs and no jobs, and men and no men, and utilities and no utilities, because that's how I drink. When I pick up a drink, I have a primary purpose, and it's to get drunk. And anything that comes between me and the next drink is disposable. And what I've thrown away to continue to drink is mind blowing. I can't say that nobody ever gave me a break. I was given millions of them. But I burn it down, just like the book says. I build up this bright future for myself. And then I pull the whole house of cards down, and I can't figure out why. Like, I do not know what is wrong with me. Again, I can tell you that I drink too much too often. But I'm just as certain that if I can find somebody who will love me enough and who will put a ring on it, if I could have me a little fat redheaded baby, that's counting on me. I truly believe, my delusion is that suddenly I will find the superpower not to pick up that first drink. And I don't know where I got that belief. And the truth is, I never got to prove it because I did not get married while I was drinking. I kept doing the divorces before the weddings. Doing things in order is a problem for me. And so um, that solution was never going to work. And the truth was that I had watched my friends who believed the same thing. And they were bringing baby carriers into the pool hall. They had to drink. They had to drink. And I'm that same kind of drunk. And gradually things got worse. I wind up moving home with my parents, who were, again, they were not drinkers, but they had a really strong suspicion that there was something not going well for their daughter. I was no longer fun or funny. I was dying. I was dying. I didn't resemble the girl that they had raised. I was still drinking at the bar every single night, but I'm sleeping at their house now because my parents are now being held hostage by their fear. Um, our parents seem to believe that we are safer under their roof than out running the streets. And what that does is that I'm just pulling them down with me because they are living in absolute terror because they can see what's going on. They can hear what's going on. And meanwhile, I'm over here saying, I don't see what the big deal is. I'm only hurting myself, blah, 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 blah. And it's so arrogant to think that that's not affecting people who love me. But on November 19th of 1992, I had just turned 26 years old. I was several days late for my own birthday party. I had asked people to throw this party for me. It was not a surprise. And yet I started drinking in one place and needed to move to another. And I don't really pause once I get started. I heard a friend say, I drink like a car with no brakes. I drink till I run out of something or till I run into something. And that's what happened. I started drinking one place and I didn't run out. And so I forgot to show up at the bar where they were having my party. And so a few days after my birthday, I went to that bar because there were some people who had left presents and stuff for me and who had paid for some drinks. And free's my favorite price. So I went to go get my free drinks and then I headed home, and on the way home I got pulled over. And this cop came up to the car window and he said, "Ma'am, how much have you had to drink tonight?" And everybody here knows the correct answer to that question. I know the correct answer to that question, but apparently when it was time to speak, God just whacked me on the back of the head because the truth fell out accidentally. I did not say two, not that he would have believed it. What I said was $67 worth. Like a moron. I mean, even the cop got tickled, like, oh, this is easy. Because we weren't drinking $12 cocktails back in the day, children, and so I decided to pivot pretty quickly. I said, hey, I know I'm drunk and you know I'm drunk. So how about we just do that little pin thing and don't make me try the alphabet again. And we'll just go to jail. How about that? He thought that was a great idea. I was a very agreeable customer because there was something inside of me that just knew the gig was up. Like there's just, I think there's a point at which when the truth starts coming out, no matter how bad it is, there is a tiny bit of relief that comes with, I don't have to keep fighting this. And I knew I was in big trouble. Like I knew I was in big trouble. At this point in time, I was the assistant director of the daycare. This was a felony DWI. They kind of frown on felons taking care of your children unless you made the children yourself. And so the only job I've ever truly adored, I can no longer do legally anymore. And they didn't really care that I had somewhere to be the next morning, so I did not get out of jail in time to unlock the daycare, which they noticed. I'm just saying they will notice something like that. And I don't even remember the lie that I told to try to get out of that trouble. But while I was sitting in that jail cell, like there was something in me that just knew I was pretty close to the end of the line, um, that I could not, I might be able to duct tape it together for a little while, but it's not like it had been going well. It just wasn't. Um, I had tried all kinds of things to get better and to put my life back together and to get back on a path that really goes somewhere, as the big book says, but none of it worked. I try to go back to college, but I mean, yeah, you still have to show up for class and turn things in. And I would be sitting in those night classes thinking, there's a bar full of unattended men. It's Monday Night Football. What am I doing here? What's college algebra got to offer me when I know right down the street there are opportunities galore, and off I would go. So I'm sitting in that jail cell, and I see myself for what I am in that moment. And I don't know that I thought you're an alcoholic, but I knew that nothing good could come into my life and stay if I continued to drink. I mean, like, I knew that. And I knew that I couldn't quit just because it was a good idea, because I can't quit for 24 hours. Like, I'd been trying to cut back for over a decade, and I'm a miserable failure at cutting back. Typically, it costs me more money to cut back than just to drink the way I drink. I don't really understand how that happens, but it's just something that I noticed. Um, and the other thing that I knew was that if they let me out of jail, I would drink again, no matter how much trouble I was in. No matter what the consequences were going to be, if they let me out, I'd drink again, because I can't swear to me, God, or anybody else that I won't do it again, because I will. So I knew on some level, I knew that I had to have help. And so I said a prayer, I asked God for help, and I made a decision to go to AA. And then they let me out. And I made one teeny tiny mistake when they let me out. I did not run straight to AA. I started trying to clean up the mess. I started trying to get that car out of impound, and I started trying to hide the letters from attorneys that were coming to my parents' house. And I started trying to make up some kind of story about why I didn't do what I needed to do at the daycare that morning when I didn't show up, and I was trying to salvage my job, and I really intended to go to AA. As a matter of fact, I was driving around the AA group. I don't know if any of y'all have ever orbited a group, but I was driving around it very frequently. I was sitting in nearby parking lots, hating myself because I didn't have the courage to walk all the way in. But I did not actually go in the door. Like, I got there one night almost right at meeting time. I almost had to go in, like the door was open and everything. But I got this alcoholic mind, and the alkalogic starts kicking in. And what my brain tells me is, you can't go to the AA meeting without an AA book. And so I left the place where the AA books live to go on this 3-day quest to go find a AA book, and that's what kept me from going to a meeting. I mean, if that's not alcoholic, I don't know what is. Then I can't go to the meeting because I got to read the book to prepare for my first meeting. I mean, my brain is out to kill me. It wants to go live by itself in a shopping cart. And I'm listening to this thing. Like, I'm listening to this thing. And so it was while I'm reading the book by myself that I got drunk one more time. And I think if I hadn't gotten drunk one more time, you'd probably have a different speaker. Um, but I'm reading that book, and it says, this is the great news, and I'm looking for great news, and I'm not seeing any great news in that freaking thing. There's a lot of focus on, if you want to stop drinking, and I'm like, I'm not drinking now, and it's not going so great. I mean, like, I'm a walking nerve ending right now. And you're telling me the goal is to continue this? I mean, this is bad. I cannot imagine if this is sobriety. I mean, how is this possibly sustainable? And that's what I'm telling myself. When my brain convinces me that I need to go back to the bar, I'm not going to drink, y'all. I'm not an idiot. I'm just going to go to the bar to talk to a criminal about my legal problems. I mean, I had a really good reason to be at the bar, which, by the way, that book says if you've got a good reason, you can do it. And so here you go. I've got a good reason. I need to go to my home bar to talk to a criminal about my legal problems because my garage attorney told me I'm going to spend a year in jail. And I can't do a year in jail. I know I seem real tough, but I am not. I am a weenie, and I know this about myself. I am not street or hood. One time I went to a crack house wearing a denim jumper with an apple on the front of it. And I looked like the world's worst undercover cop ever. Like the little crackheads were like, she has to go. We don't know what that is, but that cannot be here. I mean, so I can't do a year in jail, y'all. I know that for sure. And while I'm reading this book by myself, I start thinking about Jimmy the criminal who had 8 DWIs and he's still drinking at my home bar. And I'm thinking, here is a man with a real answer. Why am I going to go bother these nice people in AA if I know a dude who's got 8 DWIs and he's still drinking? This seems like a solution. And so I go to talk to Jimmy the criminal, and two things happened. One was while drinking, Jimmy tells me that he can afford to be the kind of drunk he is, but I can't afford to be the kind of drunk I am, which is offensive. Like, I can't pass college algebra, but this dude with 8 DWIs is telling the girl with 3 DWIs that she can't afford to drink the way she drinks. But he was talking about money. And the truth was, as the story unfolded, what I learned was that Jimmy the criminal was he was paying his attorney in cocaine, and I didn't happen to have any cocaine. And he also was going to go to prison eventually. That all that was happening was that they were just postponing the inevitable. But Jimmy seemed to think that this was an opportunity for me to find a new way to live, and I knew what that meant. And I was so mad when he was saying stuff like that I could have kicked him right in the baby maker. But there was a part of me that knew he knew. Like he knows how I drink, and he knows how I think, and he knows how I feel. Jimmy knows. The other thing that happened was that at some point there were drinks in front of me and I drank them. I mean, and I don't remember deciding to drink. I remember that I had decided not to. But then I looked down and there were empty glasses in front of me. I drank against my will. I drank knowing that it was a terrible idea. As soon as there was a drink in front of me, I took it. And it was terrifying. I did not stay sober 24 hours on willpower. So by the time I came to you, and you guys said willpower doesn't work, I was like, I can prove that. I can prove that. The difference in the girl who sat in that bar and picked up that drink against her will and this woman here is that right now there is something in between me and that next drink. And on that day, there was nothing in between me and the next drink. Like, here's a drink, meeting adjourned. We have an action to take. Today, if a drink is set in front of me, I have all kinds of things in between me and that bright idea. I have commitments. I have a sober lifestyle. I have prayers. I have a God of my understanding. I have sponsees. I have a phone list. I have, there's a ton of things in between me and a bright idea. But now that's not always the case. There are days when I skate on grace, y'all. I suspect you know what I'm talking about. There have been times when I wasn't doing what people need to do to stay sober. And grace held me here just long enough that I could get thrown back into action. So I wound up at an AA meeting. I had been trying since 7 a.m. I went to a 10 p.m. meeting on a Friday night. And I got there and I sat where the newcomer loves to sit, which is as close to the door as humanly possible. And they turned out the lights and they lit the candles. And I knew I was in a cult, but it didn't matter because I had nowhere else to go. And right before the meeting began, somebody said, "Hey, why don't you come sit down here with us?" There was a chair in the circle. And I think my recovery began when I joined the circle of Alcoholics Anonymous, when I surrendered my idea and started trying yours, whether it made sense or not. When I just was open-minded enough to try your ideas, I had a fighting shot. And so I sat down in that meeting, and y'all, sometimes we get so excited when there's somebody new in the room, we forget they don't know what the hell we're talking about. Because y'all just get real excited. And y'all start talking to me like I know what I've been reading, and I do not. I haven't been to treatment. I am not detoxed. Um, I don't know what any of your secret terms are. And so I don't know what you're saying. I've been trying to get here for a long time, but now I don't understand what you're talking about. And I'm not even sure I'm an alcoholic. Like, I know there's something wrong with me, but I don't know whether it's alcoholism or not. And the longer you talk and the more excited you get, the more discouraged I become, because I don't know what you're saying. Like, I don't know what a sponsor is, and I don't know what the phenomenon of craving is, and I don't understand a lot of the words that you're using. And thank goodness, about halfway through the meeting, a man began to share, and he knew how to talk to a newcomer in a way that a newcomer can hear. And he said, I didn't know I was an alcoholic. Hell, I just thought I was thirsty. And I was like, me too, buddy. Me too. And he said, but my problem is the more I drink, the thirstier I get. And it begins with the very first drink. And he said it twice so that I didn't miss it. And for me, that description of the phenomenon of craving is the most elegant way I have ever heard it described. The more I drink, the thirstier I get. And it begins with the very first drink. Because now Jean has just explained to me why I can't do what other people can do. Other people can walk into a bar with no willpower at all and just decide to have a couple of drinks. And then when they decide to go home, they go home. And this thing that I have been thinking is a change in my mind problem, I am now finding out has several components. I have this obsession of the mind that says I can drink normally, and I have an allergy of the body that says, no, you can't. I will want and need more as soon as a drop hits my tongue. And it's not the 14th drink or the 6th drink or the mixed drink or the shot that does that. It's the first drink that sets off this situation at a cellular level. At a cellular level. And once I understand that I can't throw willpower at what happens to me cellularly, like, I can't just will my way undiabetic or whatever else, any other condition. I certainly haven't been able to will myself skinny. Let's just process that fat differently, um that's just, I am powerless. I get that. So the whole ball game for a drunk like me is, how do I not take the first drink? And in very simple terms, there's got to be something in between me and that bright idea. And the more things I have between me and a bright idea, the safer I become. In the beginning, the first thing that was in between me and a bright idea was you. It was those meetings. It was what was happening in this fellowship that I became connected on that very first night. I became connected with a group of people who did not know me but seemed to care about me. And so your kindness was my first connection to God. At the end of the meeting, you guys hugged me and gave me a packet of pamphlets that I'm sure I threw right into the back seat of my car and never to touch again. You gave me a phone list, and you gave me a little chip. And then you told me to go to Denny's. And I went to Denny's because I thought that's where you filled out the paperwork to join Alcoholics Anonymous. I went, seriously. They just said, you got to go. We're going to Denny's. You got to go to Denny's. So I went to Denny's. And while I did not fill out any paperwork that night, I do think I went to AA orientation, because I learned stuff about you at the Denny's. I learned that you guys laugh at things that aren't funny. You share things you should not share, especially not in public. We're not really that anonymous because you have no volume control. And you say things like, isn't that just like an alcoholic? I mean, this maniacal laughter. And you just throw away that alcoholic, throw around that alcoholic word like crazy. And but what I saw there is what I see here, a fellowship of friendliness and understanding that's indescribably wonderful. And if you've been dying of loneliness while you think you're having fun at a bar, that kindness and that laughter and that come as you are kind of thing that we got going in AA, man, it's attractive. And it was so attractive to me that I went home and I prayed to a God that I knew had given up on me because I knew he was so terribly disappointed in what I had become. And yet I prayed because you told me to pray. And I went to work and I came to the very next meeting I could go to. And that's just how it's been going ever since. I went to the next meeting I could go to. And when I walked in the door, a man came up to me and he said, "Hey, is your name Jennifer?" And I said, "Why? What have you heard?" And he said, "Is your name Jennifer?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Did you drink today?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Welcome to your second day of sobriety." And he set the hook. But the hook was not that he knew it was my second day of sobriety. At that point, 2 days meant nothing to me. The big deal was that he learned and remembered my name. That was a big deal to me. And I kept coming back because you were better than anything on TV, because you were kind and because you were funny, and because I couldn't understand how you were sharing all this stuff that would make me want to drink, and you're laughing about it because you're free. And you're spoon feeding me God, and I don't even know what it is, but I know that it's tremendously attractive. But here's the thing: if you're going to go to meeting after meeting after meeting, and you're going to let people get to know you, they're going to get in your hula hoop. We are not that detaching group. Let me tell you, people are going to get way up in your business. And that's what happened to me. You get a sponsor, get a sponsor, come to the women's meeting. Come. I mean, it just gets so relentless that you either got to do it or drink. I mean, it's obnoxious how much these people are just on you. I think it's Norm Alpy who used to say being in AA is like being kicked to death by a rabbit. It's just this slow erosion of your will. And that's how it was for me. I didn't surrender all at once. I surrendered 1 inch at a time. But I didn't want to leave you, and so I did what you told me to do. I found a sponsor, even though I didn't think I needed one. And man, I picked a lame one. I'll just, I mean, I had a sponsor that had multiple years and hadn't worked all 12 steps. I didn't know she had to do that. I mean, she was a nice lady. And here's
Five
the truth.
minutes.
Okay, here's the truth. I did what she told me to do and I got to stay sober. She didn't do all 12 steps and she didn't. But by the time I realized that I wasn't taking the steps out of the book, I was all the way in. And so I just found another sponsor, one who does the steps out of the book. And my life began to change from the inside out. I found God the last place I would look for God, hiding deep down within. Why would I look there? And yet, as my book says in the last analysis, it's only there that he can be found. It was so with us. And once I got this relationship with God that's as real as you and me, things began to change in a really cool way. And it's been slow, it's been tedious. I still listen to my brain. I went to jail right before I turned 10 years sober because I threw away a ticket. I mean, I have not surrendered anything quickly. Um, but 1 inch at a time, I have given my life to you in Alcoholics Anonymous. 1 inch at a time. I have not wanted to leave you. And so I've done whatever it takes to stay, which is meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And probably my saving grace is that I work with others. When I'm not doing anything else I'm supposed to do, I'm still sponsoring. And I don't know, that may sound crazy to you, but here's the thing. When I'm working with others, they're like the flippers in pinball. If I start wandering too far off, all of a sudden the phone starts ringing, ding, 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 I'm back in the solution because somebody else has got something going on. And the thing that I'm telling her to do is the thing I need to be doing myself. And I hear it. And it's never comfortable to discover I'm a hypocrite. So I start doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That has saved my bacon more times than I want to admit. What I'm like today is I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm more in love with AA than I ever have been before because I have more to lose, but also because it is so much sweeter. I have a relationship with God that has walked me through some of the hardest times. Some of the hardest times in my life were not necessarily drinking. Some of them have been sober. The last few years have been tough. Walking parents home is not of heart. Learning how to walk through financial difficulty with two grown-ups who don't know how to be grown-ups with money has been humiliating at times. but also given me some very valuable experience that I can share with others. It's also deepened my relationship with God. What I'm like today is I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I know who I am and what I am, but most importantly, I know whose I am. I belong to God and to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm glad to be here, and it's a good day to be sober.